Council meeting, and let's get started.
We'll call roll. Iris De Carvalho.
Here.
Dave Line.
Yes, here.
Soldner.
Here.
Bagwell.
Here.
Garza.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you that we can come before you, and Lord, we're glad that you're in charge. Lord, we just want to pray for guidance. We have many of our legislative bodies that are now in session. Pray that you be with the President and the Congress as they seek to meet the people's needs, and be with our representatives in Topeka as they seek to address what Kansans also need. Lord, be with our council. Be with our council members. Continue to guide them as they do what's best for the citizens of Hutchinson. Lord, we thank you most of all for your Son, Jesus Christ. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Mayor, there's one particular item this morning with the indulgence of the governing body. It's item 6C, and that is slated as presentation of the Hutchinson Fire Department 2020 annual report and annual program appraisals. We'd ask that that be advanced to just before item 4, if possible. That's going to allow some of our fire staff to get out on the operational scene so that they can continue prearranged items this morning. More specifically, that's the control burn operation that's occurring on the north and northeast sides of the city.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yep.
You get center stage.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to come back here and talk to you guys, so it's a good day here. Over the last few months, you've been bombarded with a lot of information from HFD. And I don't expect you to read everything about it, but we gave you a lot of data here to start looking at. And in the last week here, we actually finally have our first ever annual report, along with each of the goals and objectives of each of the program areas that operate under your Hutchinson Fire Department. Your Hutchinson Fire Department is a great organization, and it's a privilege and honor to lead these men and women of our agency. When I came to Hutch, it'll be 4 years ago next month already. Time has really gone by real fast here, but we were a good organization, but we weren't a great organization. And to get us to become a great organization, we had to do a lot of changes internally here, and the men and women of Hutch Fire stepped up. The stuff that we were able to accomplish in a short time period here has been off the charts, and it's going to put Hutch Fire on the map in the United States and in Kansas forever, what we got going on. And again, like I said, it's a privilege and honor to lead these fine men and women. And so this year, I talked to you about the risk assessments that were done on over 2,500 commercial structures in our city here, where our men and women were out pounding the streets and conducting these assessments. These assessments have been put into a grid, and they're utilized in case of tornadoes, bad weathers. We have a real clear layout of what the hazards are in every one of our commercial structures in this city. In addition to that, here, your men and women have gone through, you've seen the fire hydrants in the city, they're all color coded now. We always got a hard time where Hutch didn't have good water, had a poor system. Well, out of the, I want to say 2,700 hydrants or 20-some hundred hydrants, there's less than 100 hydrants did not meet the highest standard of a blue color code. And so we got a great water supply system in Hutch. And that's a testament to the water department and what Brian and their team have been able to do to help us here. And that helps us get our Class 1 ISO rating in the city here for our commercial people and our citizens. On top of that here, we made some changes in the organization in the past 4 years. Our battalion chiefs are not so much operational all the time. They actually have administration roles in our organization where they present goals and objectives for the organization. And I just want to be transparent on everything that we do in the organization. HFD has nothing to hide. And I know as you get questions from citizens and stuff like that, that's what these books are there to help you to make decisions. In our accreditation process, you can go right to the front part of it. It tells you all about the budget process, which you know a lot about it, but specifically for fire. And all the different aspects of what we do across the board, we want to bring 100% transparency to every member of this community. And with that, it brings us into where we are with our accreditation journey. It's been a whirlwind, especially with COVID, and the team that has been assembled to put this whole thing together here consists of labor. Union president was actually on the team with a bunch of union members, along with management. And I think that's a big part of the win, is that at Hutch Fire we have that great communication between labor and management. And I can truly honestly say I talk to the union president on a daily basis, almost on a daily basis I should say, and we're all pulling the rope in the same direction. And that's a great refreshing thing to have in the organization. Chief Hanum, who's standing behind me here, he'll be talking to you shortly here. He's my accreditation manager, the person that's leading this charge here. And we anticipate, we have a meeting this week with a chief from the Charlotte, North Carolina Fire Department. And him and his team are going to be coming to Hutch possibly here this spring. And they're going to come in and take a look at our books here that we prepared here. And they're going to validate everything that we say that we're doing. It's basically a third-party audit. And to make sure where we're doing what we're doing, the best practices in our industry. And if we're not doing, what are we going to do to start doing them? And so if we get cleared by that hurdle here in March here, we'll be going in front of the commission in July of this year. And so I hope at that time to come back to you in July with the recommendation or the approval that Hutch Fire was accredited, internationally accredited. If that happens, which I'm really sure that it will happen here, Hutch Fire will be put on the map as one of 40-some fire departments in the world that have ISO 1 class city and are internationally accredited. And so, again, that's a testament to your department and the men and women that make up Hutch Fire. And so in 2020, for the people that were on council back in 2018, when I arrived at Hutch here, our data entry into our systems was horrendous. It was antiquated firehouse reporting. If you wanted to pull a report, you had to be an Excel genius to basically pull out the data out of that program in here. At the time, John, the city manager, we sat down and we looked for a way to improve that and become a data-driven organization. Let the data tell the story. And if you remember right, you guys approved a recommendation here in the 2019 budget to change our software and become part of the 911 dispatcher Tyler's software. And so we did that. So last year was the first year we got some true data for the fire departments. And some of that data you'll see here today. Well, we can get into a lot more, but we just wanted to show you some of the key things that I think are pretty interesting. And that was in that report that you've seen in this document that you have here. And like I said, Chief Hannon will go through that with you here shortly. So that's on top of that here, I alluded to a little bit earlier. As you go through this and you take a look, I think it's important to say that out of the 10 program areas that we do for Hutch Fire in this community, all the goals that were established for 2020 that were accomplished are listed in there. The ones that were not accomplished in 2020 were rolled over to 2021, along with additional goals and objectives for each program area. And so we review this on a quarterly basis with my staff to see where we are, and we continue down that journey to make Hutch the best place it can possibly be. With that, I'm going to stop talking here, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Hannon, and after that, we'll open it up for questions. I guess I got one more slide here. This is really our role model here before I turn it over here, and this is how we operate on everything that we do. We operate, we analyze, and we improve. And I think that's a great philosophy to have for an organization. Just because we did it that way last year doesn't make it possibly the right way to do it this year. And so we're always constantly looking for improvements and ideas and suggestions. So now I'll turn it over to Chief Hannon.
Morning, Council.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, as Chief stated, you got a copy of the annual report and the program analysis. I'm just going to kind of hit some of the high points, and if you got questions as we go through, I'd be glad to answer them. I could talk numbers all day long about the fire department. The new reporting software has allowed us to do so many things, and we can really pull a lot of data. So, this is just kind of an overview of the last 3 years of incidents and our totals. As you can see, we're up almost 25% over the past 5 years. Those numbers keep going up. We were just shy of 5,600 in 2020. So, and these are kind of a graph that breaks down the types of calls we go on. Obviously, you can see that our EMS calls are out there. But I think it's a good point here to point out that during our strategic plan in 2017 with the community, this just ranked just 5 points. 5 points behind fire suppression. So it was ranked number 2 in the list of things that was important to the community. So it's a very important program to the community, and you see that makes up a bulk of our calls. So the other thing that we did in 2020 was we worked with Reno County EMS and on what we call a sick call or low acuity call. We started having dispatch they went through a system where they ask questions and then they rate that call on an Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta. And an alpha call is a low acuity call. And so with that, that's a very low call, usually a non-emergency call. And so we stopped going on those types of calls, and it reduced our call volume by about 600 calls over the year. And we found out about 6 of those calls in our, what's the word I'm looking for here? When the EMS looked over it, there was only about 6 of those calls that actually went above an alpha response. So what dispatch is asking is real pertinent, and we're getting the types of calls, and we're getting them graded to where they should be. So anyway, it was a good pilot program that will continue into 2021 and help reduce some of those non-emergency calls that we were going on, and we can go out and do other things. So this next slide it kind of goes over a breakdown of our days of the week. Wednesdays usually our busiest, and it's closely followed by Saturday, and Sunday being our lowest day of the week. So just some of the breakdowns for that, and then you can look at the hour. Usually we get a little bit busier towards late afternoon into the evening hours. Starts ramping up about 5 a.m. for the day. So kind of see that breakdown. The next one just talks about our structure fire response and how much property we actually save. And you can see the notes to the side there. It's all about locations, it's all about station locations and that fast response. We get to the end, we'll start talking about times and where that really plays into how much property we can save by getting on scene as quick as we do. So in 2020, we saved 91% of the property that we responded on. We take the value of the property versus what the loss of, and that's how we get our percentage. So we're at about 91%. And I can pretty certain say for about the last 5 years, we've been in the 90 percentile over those last 5 years of the property that was saved. So this is a breakdown by territory. This is not by the total apparatus that responds to those territories. It's just breaking down. Station 1 is the station up on Main Street. It's probably the smallest area, but it's got the most density in it. So they're very closely behind Fire Station 3, which is down here to the south, as far as where our most runs. Station 3 is at 1257 and Station 1's at 1223 for the year. So those are the actual calls that occur inside that territory. So, and then obviously we cover Fire District 2, and so this is our brush fire history. Obviously there's a spike in 2017 with the wildfires we had during that year, but everything's kind of stays pretty even there. We had a low year last year, got a little wet on us in the springtime, which helped quite a bit, and so we're pretty much average of where we were. So. Next slide breaks down the budget. You can see the one chart shows that, the majority of it goes to salaries and where the rest of it goes. I think it's interesting to point out here that obviously the county pays a portion of the budget for the fire department with Fire District 2. So there's kind of a breakdown of how that works out there. So then the last slide talks about our ERF, and that's effective response force. What that stands for is we take and we grade every type of call that we go on, and we figure out how many people it takes to safely mitigate that incident. So for like a structure fire, we send 16 people on a structure fire, and of those 16 people, there's 4 or 5 main goals that have to be obtained, and then we break that down by how many people. So that's how we got to that 16. So when we talk about ERF, that's how long it takes to get those 16 people on scene. And so the nationwide standard is usually we try to have the ERF on scene in 8 minutes, and that's what we set at HFD. So you kind of look down there at the middle, and we get into the moderate fire, that starts getting into our house fires and things. You can see we're at 953. That's at the 90th percentile. That's not an average, that's the 90th percentile. So 90% of the time we're on scene. We have the ERF on scene in 9 minutes and 53 seconds. Well, we're over that by 1 minute and 53, so that's why staff really sat down when we started planning for Fire Station 1, the new Fire Station 1 on Main Street. And when that station's completed, we will be moving Truck 4 that's out at 11th and Halstead to the Main Street station. Truck 4 is typically, most of our fires occur Plum Street West. And so with that truck coming all the way from 11th and Halstead, that delays that ERF. And so we want to try to get that down to the standard of 8 minutes, so we can get those 16 people on scene within that standard. So again, just using data and where our responses are, and letting it guide our decisions on how we place our equipment and things like that. So, and I want to reemphasize, that's just a truck. There'll still be an engine at 11th Halsted. That's just the aerial truck that runs out of that station. So there'll be 2 units running out of Station 1. So you kind of look down through there. So basically the alarm handling, that's at dispatch. That should be within 1 minute. They're over. We're working really closely with dispatch to improve some things. And our turnout time's supposed to be 1:20. We're a little bit over that. Again, our guys had no idea where they really were. We talked for years about it, but now with our data, we can pull this. They can look at it daily. They can look at it monthly. Officers can really improve what they're doing. And we're probably going to be coming to you in 2022 with a request along with dispatch to do it's a computer-aided helping. Basically what it is, as soon as the dispatcher can get the call type and the location, there's a computer in the background that starts working automatically, starts adjusting who the units are, and it would be a computer voice that would come out to the fire stations to alert them that they've got a structure fire at 123 North Main Street. And these units, so it gets the guys out quicker, while the dispatcher can stay on the phone and continue to get the information so they don't have to stop what they're doing, dispatch the call out. So we'll be working with dispatch, and hopefully in 22 we'll be bringing that in the budget to try to get that piece, and that will help quite a bit on these. So
Doug,
this is,
just
yes.
real quick, I'm sorry. Are these the actuals or the goals on the
These are
cards?
actuals. This
Okay.
is the 90th percentile. So if it's coded green, it's underneath what our benchmark is.
Oh, okay.
Yellow's within 30 seconds of it, and then red is over 30 seconds. Is kind of how it's broke down. So when we started talking to our guys about their turnout time, it was 2 minutes, 2:15 was usually what it is. And so this is where they got to in 2020. And I brought a report from December. Just for December alone, they were down to 1:39. So we had tried to make a goal within the organization to get to 1:40 for 2020.
Awesome.
And they're getting there. Like I said, the captains are able to look at their times on a daily basis, and they can adjust. And they're really making a good effort to try to get that. So, you know, if you take 2 minutes and we're trying to cut a minute, dispatch is trying to cut a minute, that's 2 minutes earlier that we're arriving on scene. So again, you start looking at the first unit arriving, we're on scene 4 minutes and 10 seconds on all the fire calls combined together, which is really good, which helps us get to that 91% of the property that we're saving. So with that, I don't. The only other thing, the notes that I brought was talking about the first responder call. We were able to run a report on how much time we're actually on scene prior to EMS. And for most EMS calls, we're about 7 minutes on scene prior to EMS arriving. So you really start thinking about those difficulty breathings and those chest pains and the ability that our people have to, the big thing now is Narcan with the overdoses, to be able to reverse those effects, your cardiac arrest. The difficulty breathing with COVID coming around this year has really increased. And to be able to be on scene 7 minutes prior to an ambulance is pretty big if you're the one that's having that emergency. So.
I got a question for you,
Yes.
sir. I've been asked about twice, why do we send a big truck to emergency situation instead of just, and I've been asked that a lot. Can you tell us why?
Again, I think you go back to the numbers at 7 minutes. We do a lot of things together, and it goes back to the effective response force. It's not, it takes all three of them to do certain things, and somebody's got to be in charge of the situation, and then it takes a couple people to, especially on a medical call, to start treating, especially if it's a serious person. So there's a lot of times, and we haven't run this report, but there's a lot of times that they'll leave that scene and go immediately to something else. And it could be completely different from a medical call. It could be to a fire call. And so, and then, the other things I think that play into effect is, what's it cost to run that other truck?
Yes.
You got maintenance. These trucks have 10-year lifespan, whether they're sitting inside the station or they're actually out moving around. So there's a lot of factors that play with that. And we've been, in this city, we've been both sides. We used to run squads, and that's more staffing. And so, and then, crisscrossing units, then that actually starts slowing down your turnout times because now you're starting to move equipment from vehicle to vehicle, depending on what type of call is going on.
Okay.
So,
I've got a couple of questions, probably of you, Chief, if you don't mind. On the radar has been for several years the siting and the consideration of a new fire station on Main Street
Correct.
on the Kansas State Fair. Where are you with your discussions with the State Fair as to a site and what might be the time schedule of the new fire station?
And that's a great question here. I've been working over the years here for the past 2 years, and doing meetings with the Kansas State Fair Board. Lately with COVID here, they've not been meeting as much, and I've not talked to them recently. Prior to their superintendent leaving, Robin here, him and his team, we've met numerous times down at the vacant lot where they want us to move to at 23rd and Main Street, right, just south of Skates, in that open lot
South of
there.
Skates.
They want to use the existing building, the fire department building. They want to tear it down and make a different entrance coming in there. Or at that time, they were still talking about a hotel attached to the Meadowlark building. I'm not sure if that's in their plans yet or not, but that's what the discussion was at that time. So, but they want the fire department, that corner gone, and have us move up and use whatever land we need up at 23rd and Main Street. As Chief Hainan alluded to here, it's our busiest station, and that's why we have to get our ladder truck up there for our secondary calls and for our risk down Main Street. And the risk assessment painted a clear picture too. And it's all about response times for us here. And I think that demonstration that we showed you a few months ago here, how fast things happened when we did the sprinkler demonstration. Within 3 minutes, we don't have a shot anymore. And so if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, December and January have not been kind to HFD. The men and women, we've been running structure fires nonstop, it seems like. And so it's all about that fast turnout time and the numbers here. And we have the data now that supports us making the changes. But John, getting right back to your original question here is last year you guys approved the money for conceptual drawings.
Right.
So conceptual drawings were completed, they're turned into the city manager. And at that time with John here and stuff like that, it was pushed off a year here. And so I would hope it would be put back in the budget next year in 2022. And we can finish that project up. I think if I went back in the council meetings, July 7th of 2015, that's when city council approved the 3 station replacements.
Right.
2 of them have been completed, and this is just the 3rd one of many. And if you've been up there, as we hire more females, this is a specialty station. It's our hazmat station. There's no female facilities up at that station, which it creates a problem for us. And so if you remember, that station was the old caretaker's house for the fairgrounds. And that part has not changed. There's been an addition put onto it, but the core area is still the old caretaker's home. And so there's just some things that we need to do to get up with the times, basically, and make sure that all my men and women have the equal opportunity to work in places. And I think it's going to definitely draw a big change in our response and property protected in the city of Hutch, because before there was no data to really decide where equipment was going. And now we truly have a painted picture that tells us what we need to do and how we need to do it.
Chief, my second question relates to, bring us up to date as to what you understand our current arrangements are with South Hutchinson and the fire department, if any.
Can you repeat that, please?
Any arrangements we have with South Hutchinson Fire Department, if we have any, or is that changed appreciably, or?
Yes, that has changed. When I arrived here at Hutch, the city had a contract with them, and I want to say it was roughly $27,000 to supply our #1 ladder truck and our battalion chief on every working structure fire that they had in their city. So if we had an incident going on here, we were obligated under the contract to shut down our ladder truck and our battalion chief and send them down there, basically 4 people and $1 million ladder truck for $27,000. And so that personally didn't sit well with me when I arrived here. It was one of the things I talked to the city manager on right away. And that contract has expired. And so we have no contract with them right now. We haven't had one for probably a year and a half, 2 years already. On that, and so anything that we have now, anywhere in the county, is strictly mutual aid agreements with other fire districts.
Mutual aid.
Mutual aid. It's no automatic aid agreements, no binding contracts.
I've got a kind of a sensitive question here, and if you want to respond to it, that would be fine. What would your professional thoughts be as far as some conversations with South Hutchinson in merging their fire department with the Hutchinson Fire Department?
That's a great question too, and I have no problem answering that to the best of my ability. I have dealt with consolidations in my career and stuff. In fact, at my old place where I came from, we were the identical setup, Fond du Lac and North Fond du Lac. And the county, I think right now, if you're aware of, I think I sent you a memo here that'll be released here. I thought maybe ready here the 1st of February, but it'll probably be March. The county over the last year hired a consultant to do a independent study on all the fire districts in Reno County. In that study here, there's a bunch of fire districts that want to spend millions of dollars on new stations and infrastructure. And I think there's been some issues out there, and I'm not going to get into all the issues, but the consultant has identified this, met with all the fire districts in the county, and I think the county commissioner's approach is, let's wait to see what the study says here, but before we invest in any infrastructure and big improvements, equipment and stuff throughout the county, is they got to get it right, because whatever they do, that's going to set the pace for the next 50, 75 years for Reno County's fire service. Getting back specifically to your question, I think there's a ton of money to be saved, specifically, not so much in the operation part, but in the capital outlay costs. Without a doubt, there's money to be saved. And, I think that discussion could happen anytime. Now, whether they want to have that discussion or remain independent, that's one of the biggest things in the fire service, is that communities, whether it's a volunteer fire department paid on call, that's their identity of their community. And they, once you try to take that away from the community, they feel like they're losing something. And unfortunately, it's not just in Reno County, but across America, the volunteer fire service is a dying breed. And it's hard to get people. And most of the volunteer fire departments, the members now are in their 50s and 60s. Once that generation goes away, there's no bright future for it. There's not a lot of young people stepping up and taking on them roles and responsibilities. And but there will be a study, and you'll have access to that here within the next month, and that might shed some light on the future of Reno County.
Well, I would encourage you, and it sounds like you're open to continued discussions or some renewed discussions with South Hutchinson on the potential options for a consolidation or a merger. I've always raised a question, I think several of us have, as it relates to an all-volunteer fire department and the higher insurance rates that business and industry likely pay, as opposed to having it incorporated with the city of Hutchinson and our professional fire department on insurance rate savings.
I'd have to be part of any discussion that is led by city manager or council or whoever.
Now, Chief, they did invest in a paid department, but isn't it Monday to Friday, 8 to 5?
They run 2 people, is my understanding, Monday through Friday from 8:30 till 4:30 each day. And that's it.
Yeah.
They did have 3 people, they cut a position, and I believe it's down to 2 right now.
Seems like an extraordinary expense for a small community when you consider the equipment.
Again, and it's not so much on the operational costs, it's on the capital outlay costs.
capital.
I mean, these trucks are $500,000 piece of equipment, $1 million ladder trucks, everything else. And when you look at the geographical area, especially with where we have Station 3 positioned,
Yep.
There's definitely room for a conversation if they're open to that.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you, Chief.
I got one little question for you. 'Cause,
Yes.
you said that computerized system that's gonna be coming up pretty soon, that computer takes all the data when you have a fire, and it tells you how many engines you need out there, am I right? Is my understanding that right?
That's
Is
our,
it-
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and then does it tell you you need more engines out there? or right? Or am I
It is,
wrong?
you're partially right. That's already pre-built in the system. What the
Mhm.
new system is gonna do is to help us, what we call pre-alerts. And, once somebody calls 911 and the dispatcher picks up that phone and answers that, may we help, 911, may we help you? As they start taking the address and the problem. Behind the scenes, the dispatcher's not even doing this, a computer within 10 to 15, 20 seconds top sends the tones out to our fire stations. So we're alerted, structure fire, 123 North Main Street, and we all are getting up and heading to the vehicles and starting to respond. As a dispatcher gets more information now, she'll update it on our computers in our rigs and give us additional information. But as far as the number of engines, stuff like that, that's all predetermined ahead of time based on the nature of the call. And Chief Hanen has worked with dispatch to put in hundreds of different types of calls and the responses. Now, we can always upgrade or downgrade on responses, and that happens quite a bit too. But specifically, this program will be basically like have a dispatcher behind the scenes. It's computer-aided generated voice to us, in fact, where a dispatcher's not even talking to us.
Mhm.
And it just helps the dispatcher out because as you see, their times there, we can save 2 minutes at the dispatch time. We can save a minute at our time. That puts us on scene 3 minutes faster than we are right now. And so our property save value, we should be able to get in the higher 90 percentile and stuff like that. So every minute just, it kills us in our line of work.
Well, being that said, when I was a senior lead traffic signal technician, are you still going after the traffic lights to go green? The preemption times, are we still looking at that?
Jeff just stepped out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually had a presentation with all the traffic individuals.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely still on the radar. I'm a firm believer in that because what that does, it reduces these travel times,
Mm-hmm.
and it also helps us, number one, to get through the intersection safely. But the big thing that it does for us, it reduces our infrastructure costs. Instead of building stations and stuff like that, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, basically, where the traffic guys can basically monitor stuff right from their iPad at home when a signal goes out, but allows emergency vehicles to scoot all the way down Main Street without ever stopping,
Right.
getting us on scene that much faster. I know Police Chief is here. I know they're definitely on board with it too, and it'll be a great asset to continue to pursue for
Well,
public
I know
safety.
how it is, and it is a great asset. It is. So I just want
And I
to.
think we implemented a proposal at that time, if I remember right, a 3-year plan,
Mm-hmm.
where like first year, we would do the main corridors, like 30th and Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then with year 2 would be some of the secondary, like 17th, 11th, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
4th Street, stuff like that. And the 3rd year, just the odds and ends, basically.
Yes. Yeah, I think it would be a real good help. Now, you was talking about time. Your lights dropping the green as you're going down. It'd save you a tremendous time.
Yeah, because we have to stop at every red light.
I know.
We don't have, we got lights and sirens on, we have to stop.
Yes. Thank you, Chief.
I had just a few comments. Really, really appreciate the data-driven approach. It's incredible what this department has been able to do in just a few short years under your guidance. So that's incredible. I was wondering on some of the data that Chief Hanen presented, page 9 in specific, the structure fires, it looks like there's been about a 30% decrease from 19 to 20. I didn't know if you knew if that was the result of the pandemic, or if that's something that could be replicated or not. Not the pandemic, of course, but is it just because people aren't out and about, or what exactly?
Well, I'll tell you my 2 cents on it here. The pandemic, right away, we've seen some kitchen fires go up due to the pandemic for people staying at home. And that was definitely a concern here. Right now, we're on a downward trend. When I first arrived in Hutch here in 2017, we looked at our fires at that time. Over 50% of our fires were due to arson. Over 50% were because of arson.
Wow.
And so we made a major campaign in 17 and 18 and continue to do so, from addressing that with aggressive investigation with our investigators. We have shift investigators, and we just met here in the last month with the police department, with their detectives. We have a great relationship with our fire marshal's office and the detectives over here. We work hand in hand, and we prosecute with their help every possible person. And we've been able to drive that down, the numbers down substantially in 19 and 20 here. And as we go in through 2021 here, of all the fires we've had so far, most of them have been due to careless use and human behavior, honestly. So we haven't seen the big arson type of stuff yet. So that's been part of it, by driving some of them numbers down and just being out there. And people know, I mean, the word gets around that we're gonna pursue everybody to the fullest extent of the law with arson. If you look at every one of our fire trucks, you'll see big stickers. We're part of the Crime Stoppers. We got arson on ours though. Arson is a crime. And so that is really known in the public here. And like I said, and I think the other thing too is after we have a fire, we struggled a little bit here with 2020 with the COVID thing. But one of the things that we do to help educate our public is after we have a fire, we go around a 2-block radius and we talk to every one of the homeowners of what happened, because they're standing out there with their cameras filming us, taking pictures, and they see a firefighter cut a hole in the roof, or we broke out a window. Well, why'd you do that? They don't know. It's our opportunity to go educate them on what happened that night. And so if it was a cooking stove fire, we talk to them about cooking stove safety. And we also offer them a free home inspection if they want it. And so as we get around in the communities after every fire, we can have them one-on-ones. And if we don't, we got a door hanger. If they're not home, we leave on their door where they can contact us. And I think just the educational approach, Jade, has helped to drive them down here. And I think, but it's still human behavior. If you've seen the one the other day we had, an individual used a lighter for a flashlight.
Yeah.
That we can't control. So.
Yeah, acting like we're in the Stone Age there. The other question I had was about the 24.4% increase from 5 years ago. Is that mostly just those EMS calls? And I was wondering if maybe the data entry wasn't as accurate 5 years ago because the software was different.
I actually had a question on that too, if I could interject.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question on that was, I noticed that the numbers for 2020 fall in all areas except for like the service call, good intent call, and false alarm call. But then I see a reduction with like other fire with value and some of the others. Were some of those switched where maybe it was categorized different? Is that why you see such an increase in like service call and good intent?
Yeah,
And
there's
a decrease in some of the, like, I was just wondering if the category might have been swapped.
there's a couple reasons in 2020, going back to the discussion with the EMS calls where we cut out those low acuities. So again, we've been working with dispatch really hard to try to get their times down. And so when those sick calls, we don't go to a sick call, but if it's, I'll give you an example, fall is a big one. So they'll get a call for a fall. Well, they'll immediately try to turn that call around, and so we will get dispatched, but as they get more information, they find that, maybe they fell 2 days ago and now they're just, it's an elderly person that's, they're having some pain or whatever. So it becomes an alpha call. So they'll come on the radio and they'll say, this is an alpha call. Our unit will disregard and go back in service. That goes down as a good intent call. It's called a dispatch and canceled en route. So
there's like 300 more of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see that when we had that slide, there's about 600 of those calls that we actually cut out of actually going completely to. So
Yeah, so my question was, were those categorized in different categories in the past?
In
Is that why there's
2019,
such
we
a-
would have continued on to those calls, and so it would have been an
Okay.
EMS call.
All right, that's what I was.
Okay, I see.
And then your service calls,
Yeah.
the fire department has overwhelmingly been increasing what we call public assist or a citizen assist call, where we're assisting people that may have fell down, that are not injured, don't need an ambulance. We go to those calls and we help those people back up, get them into a bed, into a chair. Those calls are increasing at a pretty rapid rate, so that's why you see a big increase in the service calls.
Yeah, because when I was looking at it, I was like, everything's going down except, because I would think the 24 increase would be just from the service call and good intent call, because everything else looks like it's trending down.
Well, and that 24%'s over the last 5 years, and these are only 3 years calls. We used to be down about 4,500 calls.
Okay.
And so the EMS calls are significantly continue up. I think the reason they didn't continue into 2020 was because we cut out the sick calls and we cut out going on some of those alpha calls. So that number
Yeah.
will probably start steadying out, and then it will start rising again because those calls are continually to increase.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Anything else?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you guys for your time and appreciate your support as always. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, today,
Thank you for your service.
No, I said, we're probably gonna go to number 4, oral communications.
Correct.
Oral communications of the audience, cause we have no audience, but I imagine on the phone. Keep it to 5 minutes, state your name and address. Okay,
Item 5, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Iris Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Soldier.
Yes.
Bagwell.
Yes.
Garza.
yes.
Item 6A, consider ordinance authorizing general obligation bonds for the Gulf Master Plan.
Good morning, Council. Angela Richard, Director of Finance. On December 15th, you approved a contract for the Golf Course Master Plan. In addition to that contract, the golf course plans on spending $72,000 on sod. We do intend on bonding the contract of $364,000 and then the $72,000 of sod. With bonding costs, the total project authorization would be $445,000. I don't intend to bond this until later in the spring. We're waiting on some bids for other projects, and then we'll bond them all together. Because we do not have the bond proceeds yet, we will be reimbursing ourselves for the cost that we spend on the golf course master plan. Because of this, we have to follow the IRS reimbursement regulations, which states that we must adopt this ordinance so that we can reimburse ourselves later with the bond proceeds. So staff and bonding council recommend approval of the ordinance in the amount of $445,000 for the golf course master plan. Are there any questions?
Any discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city of Hutchinson, Kansas to pay the cost of certain public improvements, all pursuant to Charter Ordinance number 50 of the city, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second that.
Iris Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Soldier.
Yes.
Bagwell.
No.
Garza.
Yes.
Item 6B, consider ordinance amending section 27-406D of the Hutchinson City Code.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Ryan Vietlook, Director of Planning and Development for the city. Before you this morning is a very simple request. If you remember at your last meeting, there were a series of text amendments that staff presented and that you all approved. Upon further review of, as we were putting them in the ordinance, we realized there's a few minor errors that were on that. So this would basically just correct those errors. So in specific, the errors were, let's see, that, oh goodness, oh, the main one is that the allowance for private swimming pools was left off of the, in the C5 district was left off of the ordinance that you all approved. And then we had a wrong notation for the electric vehicle charging station. So that is all that staff has. And I'm happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
I move to approve an ordinance amending section 27-406D accessory buildings and uses of chapter 27 zoning regulations of the code of the city of Hutchinson, Kansas, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
Iris Cavallo,
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Item 7A, consider 2021 arterial street maintenance program.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Jeff
Good
Peterson.
morning.
Good morning. Director of Engineering. Each year, we bid both a residential and arterial street maintenance project. The residential street project was bid last fall since we included crack filling to kind of get a jump start on that and get that finished up before the actual the actual chip seal project gets started. Now we're in the process of moving the arterial street project forward, and as you know, the purpose of these projects are to extend the life of our streets in order to minimize more major rehabilitation or reconstruction of a city street. So, as I've mentioned before, and this as an order of magnitude, spending $1 on the preservation of our streets at the right time can delay or eliminate spending $6 to $10 on future or more major rehabilitation or reconstruction. So, for the budget this year, just for your information, we have a $1,667,000 for the arterial street project. Of that, it comes from several sources, of course. The federal fund exchange, which is larger this year because they rebalance their funding between cities and counties. So KDOT's amount of that is higher this year than normal. Usually it's about $400,000. And then we have, of course, the quarter-cent sales tax, which goes to street funding, but also goes to support the Cosmosphere and Stratica as well. And then $250,000 from the growth fund. So those are our sources of funding for those this year. So when assembling these projects,
Jeff, what is this number compared to, say, the last couple of years,
well,
as far as a trend?
last year we were a little bit less, at least on the arterial. We were like
Okay.
$1,597,000.
So a
But-
slight bump then.
For the arterial, yes.
Yeah.
For the residential, actually, we were a little over $1 million, and then we went down to about $880,000 this year. So we're a little less than we were the previous year, but that's kind of where we're sitting. We were like at 2.59 million for the overall street maintenance projects, and this year we're at roughly 2.57, so we're pretty close. I mean, in funding overall, but, so good question. When assembling these projects, we kind of step back to the IMS study that was completed in 2018. That's one of our sources of kind of assembling these projects. This study recommends like types of treatment on the street, such as a thin mill and overlay, or a thick mill and overlay, or other types of maintenance options. And then it lays out also a preliminary schedule for maintenance, for the maintenance program. We don't use that totally for everything we put together, but we do use it as a guide. The engineering department and the street department kind of review information from the IMS study, but we also go out and drive the streets, and there are streets that creep up on us essentially, or have more problems, and that we have to move them forward in the schedule too. So, and we try to lump these kind of in areas so that the project isn't like on the northeast part of town or in the southwest part of town, and try to keep them all in the same place so they don't have to relocate during the project quite as much too. So then we compile all that information and we try to fit it into the size of each year's budget, of course. So this year, and it's a little bit tough to see on the map, but the red are the streets we propose to mill and overlay this year. That would be a couple of different things. Some places we are doing 2-inch mill and overlay, and some places we're doing 1.5 inch mill and overlay, and it kind of depends on the street and the locations we're at, just to kind of make our funds go as far as we can. I did include what we have on Halsted Street. That one was actually bid with the residential street project, because that's a a scrub seal that's gonna be completed by that contractor, but that is a portion that will be paid for by the arterial side of things, since it is a arterial collector type street. So,
So most of the work this year is being done on the southwest.
it is. And actually, yes, last year's projects were actually on the southeast part of town primarily. So like Fourth Avenue, South Severance Street, and a number of other locations on the south part of town, so.
It only goes down to about Third Avenue though.
But,
not in
any,
the big
any other,
areas.
any questions in particular on anything?
Yeah, Jeff, you know, the most complaints I have is, as I've been a city council member, is the holes that we have in the street. I know we just recently bought a truck that does that, am I right? That fills the holes?
Yep, the Public Works Department,
Do we
correct.
just use that one truck, or do we have two crews, or?
That I don't know. I think we mainly just use that truck right now. I'm not positive. That may be more of a Public Works question.
Right.
Steve, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, yeah, that's the most questions I get. Why can't we do anything about the holes in our street?
Well, it's a two-step process. We gotta
understand.
know about the holes and then we gotta get out there, so.
Right.
So sometimes we know about them and some,
Can't do it
I
if
mean,
you don't
and we
know
get
where it is.
notified and that kinda, how that works out.
My other thing was, so where are we at with the bridge?
The bridge, are you talking, which bridge?
Oh, sorry, the one over there by, that goes to South Hutch.
Oh,
Like, we didn't get the grant,
the
so
Woody
what
Street
are we
bridges?
maintaining this year? And where are we getting the money from?
Actually, that'll be coming up pretty soon. We do our biennial, well, the city has to inspect our bridges every 2 years. We completed, well, that was being completed this fall, and we'll have the report on those bridges, should be in the next month or so, and then I was gonna bring that
Okay.
back up to everybody, so that's a good question too. So, we would recommend that the council accept the proposed arterial project as presented. This project has been advertised, and pretty quick we'll be receiving bids and presenting those bid results to you guys too.
Jeff, I have a question for you, if you don't
Yes,
mind. I know this is probably a bad time to ask this, but if we bought another truck to get caught up with the holes, would that, I mean, that truck's not cheap, is it? I mean, what's that truck run, Jeff? That hole,
I do not have an idea on
to
that.
catch up with the holes we have? Would that be an option some year, or?
I'd like to at least have one full operating year to see what the capacity of that unit is when it's
Mhm.
properly dispatched. My guess is if we looked at that later on, we might find that crack seal would be an area to advance on to a
I
higher
see.
degree, maybe than what we're doing also. I'm not suggesting that's the exact situation we're facing, but I think it's gonna take at least a year of
Okay.
complete operating to know. When I first came to the city, I drove around, of course, got familiar, and I had a few pothole requests myself. And I watched at the response time of that unit, and it was pretty quick. But what I also noticed was that they waited for a group of potholes to come together instead of going out and just hitting 2 or 3 in a
Right.
day. They would compile a list, and then the truck would dispatch. So I think there's some efficiency to be gained still.
Okay.
And I'd like to monitor that at least for a year.
Okay.
And I would add that we are actually kind of putting more emphasis on crack sealing also, that for city personnel, as well as we added crack sealing to the residential. So we're trying to catch up with that, so that it'll be not a slow process, but it'll be a process to improve those situations too, Steve, so.
Okay. The big thing, Chief Hooper, the big thing I seen a police car about a month ago was on a red light, and I seen this car hit a pothole, and it went up in the air, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, that must be terrible in our police car. So that's what made me thought that maybe we can try to ramp this up just for the police and fire equipment itself. Yeah,
And did you report the pothole, Steve?
yes, I did.
Good. See, it does
You don't
no
wanna
good
see
unless.
potholes. I think that's like the #1 complaint that we
Yeah.
ever hear is our road conditions. You know, people
Well, I
get
don't-
really upset when there's poor road conditions around and they feel that the city might be wasting money on other things and not taking care of the core infrastructure, which is really important to a lot of people, that we have good water, that we have a good sewer system, that the roads aren't having puddles, that the potholes, and so So a lot of people are upset about that. So if we can keep up
Got
the
a report.
momentum with the chip seal and getting the potholes done and making sure that our roads are taken care of, I think that'd mean a lot to the people of Hutchinson.
We're trying to do that, but as well as we can. I mean, there's always more streets that we would like to do, honestly, but it's kind of a function of a number of things, and funding's one of them.
Yes.
Well, I got called for 2 mayors that called me, and I asked them that, congratulate me, and I asked them about their streets. Says, well, we have problems with our streets too. So
Right.
I found out we're not the only ones.
No, we're not,
It's
but it's
everywhere.
still, that's where we live and that's what we notice.
That's right.
I do understand that.
Okay, I will move to approve the city's 2021 arterial street maintenance program.
I will second that.
Iris DeCarlo,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Beckman.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Item 7B, consider Fun Valley Art.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. Bring in my presentation up. There we go. So this item is for the art that is associated, 1% for art that is associated with the replacement of the bleachers at Fun Valley Sports Complex. The bleacher project was completed about a year ago. It was February, March when we finally wrapped that project up. That project had a price tag of $750,000, meaning the 1% under the ordinance was then $7,500 was required to be spent on art. So the way this process worked was the Art Design Council took that project, took the budget, and then they selected a selection committee, so a subcommittee of the Art Design Council. That committee is listed in the memo, and so it was that committee's job to kind of guide the process of what type of art we want, where we want the art installed, how do we go about selecting the art. So at the very first meeting, we really talked about, the subcommittee talked about what do we want the art to look like, what do we want to represent. And a lot of that conversation was based on, we wanted something very representative of Fun Valley. So nothing abstract, nothing, nothing crazy, just something that you looked at and recognized it as a softball, baseball type structure or art. We wanted something that was kind of iconic, so something that would create a memory. So for the kids that are playing tournaments there now, will remember, hey, I remember going to Fun Valley and there was this cool art thing. We also wanted that piece to be interactive, so we wanted people to be able to go up and touch it, take their picture by it, create kind of that iconic feel and that memory of the site. So we did an open call for artists. So it was pushed out publicly through multiple avenues. We also reached out directly to everyone on the listserv for the Sculpture Art Walk program that we've had here in Hutch for the last 5-6 years. So we received 6 responses from that. And the response that really we all kind of gravitated towards very quickly was this piece submitted by Tom Reefy. That's how you pronounce his name. We had to ask him. Tom Reefy. So it is a 2D silhouette of a baseball. So it's 1-inch thick steel. So it's heavy duty thick steel. It will be painted. On one side will be painted like a baseball, so white perimeter with red laces. On the other side will be painted yellow or chartreuse with red laces to represent a softball. And that will then be installed on that primary walkway from the parking lot up to the main complex. So everybody that comes into the facility will see this. The other thing we were excited about this is, again, one of our goals was to have an interactive piece. And so it's a big piece. It's 12 foot tall, or 12 feet around. So great opportunity for pictures because it is hollow on the inside. So what you're seeing in gray is all cut out. So it's just a cutout of a softball. And so you can have teams and whatnot standing behind it, standing in front of it. You got individuals standing in front of and behind it. Hutch Rec was excited about it, as well as an opportunity for their team photos. So every league that they have out there, they have a team photo. They'll use this piece of art either in the foreground or background for that picture. Another thing we really liked about this is the way it's mounted. So it's actually mounted, all the concrete base and everything will be down below grade. So it'll look like when the grass grows back over, that this giant 12-foot steel painted baseball softball is just sitting there in the grass. So it should be kind of a cool look. Like I said, I think it really kind of meets that requirement of that memorable kind of iconic piece out at Fun Valley. So the selection committee did take that recommendation to the Art Design Council for final approval on December 20th. They did approve that. They felt that it was kind of met all the criteria set out by the Art Design Council. So with that, we'll move on to my recommendation is to approve the contract for the installation of the art with Tom Reefy for an amount not to exceed $7,500. I believe Tony Finley, he was also on the call or on the selection committee. I think he's on Zoom. If there's any questions for either one of us, I'd be happy to answer those.
Is there going to be any writing on it at all?
Nope.
No, okay.
And it's completely hollow, so the yellow and the white are just gonna be that outline line?
Just the perimeter, yep. And then the laces will be painted on both the baseball and softball. They have red
And
laces.
they won't be sharp, right?
They won't. That's something we asked them about. We'll make sure we grind it. It is 1 inch thick steel, so it's a heavy duty piece.
What
so
about
then-
the maintenance costs for long term?
There may be a little bit of touch up paint over time, but being steel like that, there shouldn't be any long term maintenance on it. And generally, they'll give us paint to match whatever they use it. So if we need to go out and, down at the base, if it gets hit by a weed whacker or something, and we need to clean that up a little bit, we'll have the right paint.
What's the timeline, Justin?
We're hoping to have it installed this spring, so May, June,
Okay.
time for the majority of our play this year.
Okay.
Did they even think about putting any writing on it, Fun Valley on it at all?
We talked about that some, and I think we decided not to. And part of it too was most tournaments, whether there are tournaments or somebody else's tournament, they'll have a banner that they'll say, Fun Valley, paint the valley pink or whatever. So they'll have specific for that tournament.
I see. Any other discussion, any motion?
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the 1% for art, so there's not much I could say about that.
I'll move to approve the contract with Tom Reefy for art installation at Fun Valley Sports Complex for an amount not to exceed $7,500 in accordance with the 1% for art ordinance and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Iris DeCarlo,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Soldner.
Yes.
Bagwell,
No.
Garza.
Yes.
Item 8, report of city officials.
Okay, Sarah, I'll let you go first, please.
I don't have anything today. Thank you, though.
Okay. Ms. Jade?
I had one item. I think we all saw the news release about the arrests at the atrium and getting a lot of feedback about how deleterious that vacant structure is to our community, which isn't a news flash for us. But was wondering if there's any update on communication with developer or current owner?
Happy to provide that. Had a meeting last week with the chamber specific to the atrium. The easy piece of this is to make the purchase and then to put ourselves in an ownership role of it as a city until we get the right developer into the facility. For a period of time, I was not wanting to suggest that because most of the time cities aren't in the role of maintaining hotels. It's something we try to avoid. We pay money to avoid that. But instead, it would seem, especially based off recent events, we're kind of already babysitting this property in a big way. The community's dealing with it, our departments are dealing with it, and part of the discussion with the chamber was that there is renewed interest by some parties that were not associated with the original developer that we had launched discussions with. So we're trying to open up those discussions a little bit just to see what their specific interest is. But at some point, I'm probably going to bring to you guys a request to make an outright purchase of 1.6 million bucks to just buy, acquire it, hold it, stabilize it. The stabilizing piece is perhaps just as much as the acquisition. We're potentially looking at $1 million, $1.5 million to do that. I've seen a range of cost on the demolition that ranges as little as $800,000 all the way up to 1.4. And part of that is the piece that readies it for future development. It wouldn't be a complete tear down. It would still save and preserve the conference center portion of it that's still viable, I think by anyone's recommendation. But it would eliminate and get rid of the old hotel rooms that so many people have complained about on the convention side. So I feel like we're at a point where we need to have a few further discussions on the financial side with our people internally, and we are. But I really do feel at some point soon I'm going to bring back a dual part proposal to you for purchase of 1.6 million, and then for the understanding that demolition would quickly coincide with that, somewhere in the range of 1.4 to 1.5.
Jeff, where are you with the pro forma analysis?
We're still in progress on that. That has not been completed for release yet.
Okay. To me, I think that's really an integral part of our decisions and the scheduling of the acquisition and so on. That
I would agree.
My comfort level would be much greater if we were had an opportunity to look at that pro forma itself and what scenarios that would look like.
Yeah, it pulls into the transient guest tax piece of it that later supports whoever that private developer is. And let's face it, that facility, even under a new model, is not going to fully support itself. There's going to be the anticipated contractual obligation of the city to support that going forward with whoever that developer is. And so that piece that John mentions is integral to that discussion and our capacity to support whoever that developer is and their visions. So.
Well, I really appreciate that update, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that because, I mean, that's an enormous investment, and obviously there's a lot better things we would probably like to do with 1.6 million, well, more like $2.5 million by the time you stabilize it or demo the hotel. But I think there's a sense in the community that these large vacant properties are the city's responsibility to do something about. And we don't have the ability to touch most of them. We don't have the ability to touch the Kmart building. They won't engage with us at all. We don't have the ability to do anything with the old Eaton building. We don't have any ability to deal with Target. I mean, there's so many buildings we can't work on. So I would be in favor of doing what we can to help manage that situation from further decline. So very excited to hear that. And that's all I had, Mayor.
Thank you. John?
No, I have nothing this morning.
Nancy?
No, nothing.
Actually,
Go
I
ahead.
forgot I had an email.
Go ahead.
From, so I had someone reach out to me. They were wondering, I'm just going to read the question out. I think it's directed towards you guys. So during Tuesday's review of the Archery Club lease agreement, would you please inquire as to why the property is no longer identified as the Reno County GIS as a Hutchinson holding? Shouldn't that property be treated the same as other Hutchinson-owned properties that are engaged in lease agreements? I.e., as an example, the paintball concern. I've also noticed the removal of the 120 acres south of the river across from Cary Park, former ATV trails, from the GIS as well. So they were inquiring about why it would be removed from the GIS, and didn't know if you had any information on that.
I can't speak to that. GIS is in the computer coded.
Yeah.
Graphic and.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know, normally that's a function of the county, but I could be wrong here.
Okay.
I'd have to provide a response to you later after investigating it.
All right. Well, that was the only thing I had a question on.
Thank you.
Okay, well, me being mayor for a little over a week or 2 weeks, and I've had a lot of calls. Jay, you had a lot of guts.
Thanks, Steve. It's
Well-
fun, isn't it? Isn't it great?
Oh, yes. Well, last week I had some individuals call me about boxing in Hutchinson, Kansas. A boxing club over there on Adams Street. They invited me to go over there. I went over there and seen little eight-year-olds boxing. all the way up to, I would guess, 16, 18-year-olds. And they asked me that they wanted to start the Golden Gloves back in Hutchinson again. Now, I assume they wanted to get it back going over here at the Memorial Hall here, or Convention Hall. And I told them I didn't know how we do that. I don't know, the city has they said they're gonna pay all the entry fees and everything for the Golden Gloves. It's an organization that wants to. That particular boxing club on Adams Street was gonna get it going again with a chapter of the Golden Gloves here in Hutch. But I assume that they're looking at the price of Memorial Hall or go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, be happy to answer that. So yeah, we'd love to talk with them.
Okay.
Our current rate's $220 per day, for events. So,
Okay.
So yeah, that would be a great fit. We've had some mixed martial arts and I don't know if we had boxing recently in there, but that is an event we're open to.
Okay.
So yeah, would love to have that conversation with them. So if you could either give me their information or vice versa, I would be happy to speak with them.
Okay. I will give them the information. They'll probably be giving you a call.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you. Other than that, I think we just need to be conscious of the masks and hope everybody wears them. We need to do that. Take care of our city. And other than that, Mr. Jeff, it's up to you now, sir. Got any comments?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Just got one thing, and it's a house cleaning item for us, really, housekeeping item, and it pertains to the LEC project. I think when the project was presented to you all, going way back, it contemplated a $50,000 public art investment to be located in the atrium of the new facility. And I think it's long been understood that 50,000 was a threshold of discussion that was included in that. I didn't review all of the meeting minutes, but I do remember when I first came here, it was mentioned at least once when I early arrived. What we found out is that 50,000 is a 2% mark instead of a 1%. And I don't know that it requires formal action. If it fell below the 1%, I think that it would at that point because it wouldn't be commensurate with the ordinance. It's over that amount. Just wanted you all to be aware of that. I don't think that it's a new development that's going to cause disruption financially to any piece of the project, but I didn't want someone later on to come back and have a discussion with you all that we so finally regulate the percentage of other public art impact, but in this case we went over and it was part of the governing body's discussion all along. I thought it was fair that you all know and recognize that it was 2% versus 1%, and that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And what is that? Is that for the front of the building? I think Dave Line had mentioned or brought that up, that you wanted the front of the building to look nicer. Is that what that's for, or is that inside the building too?
It's my understanding it would be inside the building in the south entryway, but the chief is here. I'm sure he'd be happy to speak to that.
Are you doing both then?
Yeah, the art that we had planned from the beginning of the project is a law enforcement memorial bronze statue in that inner kind of atrium area. And we've been working with the Art Design Council on that, and we're ready to take that out with an RFP to bid and at that cap at $50,000 on that part of the project. In answer to your second question with Councilmember Dave Line, we are still working on the exterior portion of the project. We had some unexpected cost in the building with our windows, and we also had some mitigation of asbestos that we weren't anticipating, and so that has limited our funds for the exterior of the project, but we still believe that we have about just under $100,000 that we can invest in the exterior of the project to make a change there. So it may not be as dramatic as we once had anticipated, but it will look different and more modern. So.
That's all right.
I need a motion for executive session, please.
How long do you think we'll be meeting?
Quit laughing.
11:30 be sufficient, or?
How long do you have?
It always gets extended. Let's try 10:50 to start out.
Okay. I move to recess into executive session pursuant to the employer-employee negotiations exception KSA 75-4319B3 in order to discuss issues related to 2021 and 2022 contract negotiations with the city's bargaining units. The open meeting to resume in the city council chambers at 10:50 a.m.
Second.
Iris DeCarvalho?
Yes.
Dave Light?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Bagwell?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Nope. Oh, Lord. Yeah, I just always use mine. It's fine. As long as this, I mean, some of those legal documents, you know, it's interesting, some of them do have to be signed in black. But I've never been called back to sign something I signed in blue. One thing I was thinking, Steve, is after you have a second, if you can, and you might write this on your agenda so you remember next time, you might just say,